God bless you. It's great to connect with you this fine and wonderful day. It is a glorious day. It's a great day to be alive. And I believe that we ought to at all times give praise unto the Lord. How are you doing though? How are you? Um, it's not able really to have a two-way conversation at this time. But in the days and the time in which we are living in, sometimes we can just take it for granted that everybody's doing well, that everybody's doing fine. And even though I cannot see you, even though I don't know if anybody's there listening, I'm just asking the question: how are you keeping? What's on your mind? What's on your heart? When since or when last did you really have a talk with the Lord? When since last have you really shared your heart with the Lord? There is so much going on around us, politically, financially, socially, economically. There are areas of our lives that really are plaguing us, that may be really plaguing you: family issues, marriage issues, issues at work, issues in the community. Your next door neighbor may be getting on your nerves. Are you coping? Are we coping? Are we coping with around us? And I'm sure we would be very much startled and are taken aback if those who you believe tall, and when I say well, I don't mean within the body sick or anything like that. I'm talking about we are not coping, they are not coping, you are not coping, but because we have an image to uphold, then we're not really truthful with anyone and even with ourselves, really. But I just want to encourage you right now that if you just give the Lord at the altar, just go to the Lord in prayer, talk to Him, share with Him your concerns, share with Him your difficulties, whatever you're struggling with. Let Him know. Tell Him you're not coping at all. There's pride. There's a certain degree of pride, yes, that we all must have. There is a certain degree of pride that we all really must maintain. But pride can destroy and alienate us from family, from friends, in very difficult positions that it's not will not be helpful at all. But it's up to you, though. If you want the help, I'll be able to help you. I'm not the well-rounded individual that I really love to be, or love to be able to help address issues and help people, because I have problems myself that I need help. But sometimes I've noticed that when we help others, to some degree, at times we are ourselves, and but when you help others, the problems, the circumstances that surround even our own selves, sometimes they themselves solve themselves. So don't be afraid to seek help, because help is there for all of us, even if it's someone that you can say, just pray, offer a word of prayer, right? Not doing that at times, not to solve the problem that is all around us. We are in the book of the Song of Solomon, Song of Songs, a book that Solomon wrote through. It's taken us time in which with a young lady, a Shulamite from Lebanon, fell in love with her. She fell in love with him. Obviously, time has gone by that they have now organized the wedding. They've planned it. The wedding has taken place. The wedding ceremony has taken place, and we are now in the very beginning stages of the relationship. Everybody who is anybody at all that has gone into a marriage, there are problems. There are issues. There are situations that we all face. There isn't anybody that can ever say that they have a marriage made in heaven. It may look so because we all present differently. There's some people who can mask it very well, and there's some, you know straight away that things are not right, and it's just a downhill from day one or from day 5. Let us say it's downhill until it just crashes and burns. Sadly, these things do happen. But in this particular session, we're going to be looking at, and I have entitled this particular session as Indifference and Withdrawal. Indifferences and withdrawals. I'm going to be reading from verses 1 to verse 4 of chapter 5 of the Song of Solomon. As we go into it, you may see why I have entitled this particular session Indifference and Withdrawals. Because probably if you are married, and you could be in your 40th year of marriage, or this may be your first marriage. There are marriages out there, there are individuals, out there that have been married 2, 3, and even 4 times. I'm not here in this particular session or throughout the Song of Songs to ever tell you that you are wrong to be married 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. I mean, there are people out there that have done that. I'm not here to do that at all. I am just here to talk and to address about the marriage relationship. All of that can be done again another day and another time. And probably you are, you do have sessions like that going on in the area where you live or where you worship anyway. So I'm not here to say yay or nay to that. I'm just looking at the this particular situation of a marriage relationship. Now, this marriage here, I am suggesting that this marriage that we're looking at in the Song of Songs is Solomon's first marriage. We all know the Bible tells us that Solomon married, well, he had, including concubines, 1,000 women. We know that. If you have read the scriptures any at all, and not only the scriptures, but if you've done biblical history or any biblical study, Solomon, who was the third and the last king of the united Israel before the split, and that split, north and south kingdoms, came about when his son took over, Rehoboam, and things fell apart. But for Solomon, he had 1,000 wives, including concubines. I'm saying that this particular account here is talking about his first marriage. Yeah, I don't think that he was married before now. I don't think so. I haven't got an innumerable amount of resources to turn to say that this was his first, or his third, his 50th, or his 60th marriage. I don't think it was. There isn't anything out there that I have seen that shows that this was not his first. But I believe, based on what I'm reading, what I have read, and what we are addressing at this moment, that this was his first relationship with a woman, going into a marriage with a Shulamite, a citizen, or a Lebanese, if I can say it, a citizen of Lebanon. She was not of, it does not seem that she was of the household of Abraham or any of the tribes of Jacob. So she was someone from the outside new coming in to be the wife, the companion, the queen, that would sit beside Solomon, who was king. He was, or he was to be king. Whether he was the king here and now, I am not too sure about that either, because there isn't really any information, not unless I haven't read it yet, not unless the scriptures, because again, we're open to it and we're going backwards, okay? But Israel, but Solomon, his life, as far as I'm concerned, this is his first marriage, his first experience of having a companion, a wife, in order to live with, to take on. So, and this is also a picture of Christ and the church, or God and his people. Now, Solomon was flawed. We know that. We all know that. Any human being, man or woman, never perfect. There's only one individual who was ever perfect, and that was Christ, the Messiah, when he came into this world. And he came as the spotless, the sinless Son of God. But Solomon here, he was flawed, terribly flawed. And in his writings, again, we will see, as we go into the scriptures, we will see he even says that all is vanity, life is vanity. All that we experience, all that we have, all that we attain to is vanity. Nothing's lost, nothing lasts. And I'm sure I'm talking to individuals who know the scriptures quite well anyway, and you know what I'm saying. I may have missed out a lot. I may not be clear on what I'm saying, but forgive me. You know, and I would say you know more about Solomon than probably I may ever know of. And I'm just learning, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm looking at information on a daily basis. Yes. Solomon was flawed. Christ was not. God is not. But in the relationship between God and his people, or Christ and the church, who is flawed in that? Isn't it the bride? Isn't it us? He is not flawed. He's perfect in his thoughts. He's perfect in his doings, in his actions. He is perfect in all his ways. But for us, his people and his bride, we are flawed. We are the ones that have made and continue, it would seem, continue to make errors and to commit things and to say things that the Lord God does not like. He's not for it at all. And God could put us away. But he will not. He could also substitute us for something else, but he has not. He will not. Solomon took on another 999. And if this is his first, then he took on another 999 women. God is not going to do that. He's sticking with us, and I think that we're going to see that to some extent. But let's just take our time as we go through the Song of Songs together. And yes, if you're saying this also, go back to it. I'm going to miss a lot of points. I'm going to miss out on a lot of information that's there embedded in scripture. But again, that's for you to go back and to dig up, to dig again. Use the implements that God has given you for you to go back and to unearth that which I have missed. And whatever you unearth will either correspond with what I'm saying or what I've said. It will either corroborate everything that I'm doing, or it will either destroy what I've said and to some extent lay again, so that if you see me or if you want to communicate to me, you can do that and help me to understand the scriptures even more, because we're here to help one another, isn't it? I can't understand at times why at times we feel as if we know all and we can't be corrected, or we can't be told because we know it already. We don't know it. I don't know it all already. No. But we have to read it. We have to tackle it at some stage. And for us to understand a particular thing, doesn't have to be only in the theological realm. It could be electrical. It could be mechanical. It could be in the building trade. It could be biological. Anything at all that it is that we have, and that we do. If we're going to know it, we've got to tackle it. We have to tackle the situation and learn from it. We have to. It's important. It may be hard. It may be very, embarrassing at times, knowing one thing and then knowing that what we have known or what we are taught is completely rubbish. It's completely wrong. Even though we have told others about it, we have to go back to them and say, listen, whatever I said, whatever I showed you, whatever I did was wrong. This is the right way. And this is what we've got to do, isn't it? So let's go into the scriptures at this moment. I'm going to read from verses 1 to 4 of the Song of Songs from chapter 5. I'm going to read all 4 verses from the Jewish text. I'll read it quickly again from the Jerusalem Bible, and then we'll read that from the King James Version. Right, 4 verses. They're not very long, but it's interesting if we just read and hear what each of these Bibles are saying. Chapter 5, verse 1. My sister, my bride, I have entered my garden. I am gathering my myrrh and my spices. I am eating my honeycomb along with my honey. I am drinking my wine as well as my milk. Eat, friends, and drink until you are drunk with love. I am asleep, but my heart is awake. Listen, I hear my darling knocking. Open for me, my sister, my love, my dove, my flawless one. For my head is wet with dew, my hair with the moisture of the night. I've removed my coat. Must I put it on? I've washed my feet. Must I dirty them again? The man I love put his hand through the hole by the door latchet, and my heart began pounding at the thought of him. That was from the Jewish text. The Jerusalem Bible says, I come into my garden, my sister, my promised bride. I gather my myrrh and balsam. I eat my honey and my honeycomb. I drink my wine and my milk. Eat, friends, and drink. Drink deep, my dearest friends. Verse 2. I sleep, but my heart is awake. I hear my beloved knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is covered with dew, my locks with the drops of night. I have taken off my tunic. Am I to put it on again? I have washed my feet. Am I to dirty them again? Verse 4. My beloved thrust his hand through the hole in the door. I tremble to the core of my being. And the King James Version, it says, what does it say? Verse 5, or chapter 5 and verse 1 says here, I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my myrrh and my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled. For my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. I have put off my coat. How shall I put it on? I have washed my feet. How shall I defile them? Verse 4. My beloved put in his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. Now, I just want to just share something with you, and I think it's good for me to at least share with you about this particular area in which we are going through together. Now, there's an author by the name of Williard F. Harley Jr., and he wrote a book entitled His Needs, Her Needs, Building an Affair-Proof Marriage. Yes. His needs, her needs. I just want to repeat that again, because I think it's a good book for anybody that's either going into marriage or even those who are in marriage. His needs, her needs, building an affair-proof marriage. Now, in this particular book, and this is going to run through the entire chapter 5, and it even may go into chapter 6 of the Song of Solomon. But in this particular book, Williard Harley Jr., he highlights here that the needs of a man and the needs of a woman are very different within a marriage relationship. And he lists 5 top needs of men and 5 top needs of the woman. Yes, and they are different. And let me just, he is a marriage coach. Let me just say that he is a marriage coach, and he's also a psychologist. So he has studied this area of marriage and how men approach marriage and how women approach marriage. Listen, this here is very much important, and it is very much highlighted in the book of the Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon. Solomon must have had great difficulties with these 1,000 women that he had to marry, or, well, it's not that he had to do it. He did it in order to form alliance with other kings and kingdoms, and to allow certain things, and for his kingdom to be at peace, even though his father, David, had done what he believed needed to be done in order to preserve peace for his son. Which father wouldn't do that for his son if he had the ability to? But Solomon here went about it a different way. And in his different way, not only did he not rely on the Lord, he formed his alliances with other kingdoms and nations and peoples through women and with women. And he must have had great problems. So with us looking at the Song of Songs, we as men, particularly because I'm a man, and Solomon is a man, and he's having to write and to inform or to leave some information of his situations. We must know how to do it ourselves, how to navigate the problems of marriage and relationships, and help even our children and others to navigate the minefield of marriage. So we've got to, and also our wives or women must also be able very much to look at the Song of Songs and be able also to see how the Shulamite, how she responded to her husband, how she, whether it was positive and or the negative things of what to do and what not to do, not only for the woman, but for the man also, the husband, to do what to do and what not to do. And obviously, even in our present world today, and not only the very world, but even in our own, well, as Christians, churches, church organizations, whether again we be what's the word, Pentecostals or evangelicals, or whatever it is that we say we are, we are all having problems. We all face marital problems. You may not be married, but you've got people in your church. You may be a minister in your church. You may have started your own Christian church, and people are getting saved. Thank the Lord. You are showing men and women to Christ. But in amongst all of that, married people are coming in, and they have problems. Some real issues. Some are manageable. Not everybody has the same problem. Not everybody has the same intensity of relational problems. Okay. But let me just give you the 5 top priorities of a man when men, it is said by Willard Harley Jr., of what the man expects or expresses needs to be fulfilled. 1, it is sexual fulfillment. 2 is recreational companionship. 3 is physical attractiveness. 4, domestic support. And 5, admiration. And if you notice, I'm just going to touch on it. If you notice, the number 1 aspect here for a man going into a marital or married relationship, the number 1 here is sexual fulfillment. Let's look at the woman's need as far and as much as what Mr. Harley Jr. noted here. The number 1 out of a woman's 5 top needs are: 1, affection; 2, conversation; 3, honesty and openness; 4, financial support; and 5, family commitment. So their number 1 here is what? Affection. Sexual fulfillment is not noted here at all amongst the 5 top needs of women. Isn't that interesting? Now, but let me go back a bit, and then we will look at verses 1 to 4 of chapter 5 of the Song of Songs. Sexual fulfillment is man's number 1 need. It is not even on the list of women, as I've said before. Yes, sexual fulfillment is not on the list for women. Most men have a continuing appetite for sex. Though most women have a sexual appetite, it is usually not as strong. If a wife has a long, hard day, the last thing she feels like doing is having sex. If a man has a long, hard day, he may need to have sex to relieve some tension in this area, and countless others, marriage partners, must adjust to each other. It's about adjusting, isn't it? It's about learning one another. And sometimes, more often than not, probably, we don't talk about these things. We don't talk about it in the home with our children first and foremost, where it should be. We don't talk about it even among friends, or we don't talk about these things even in the church. And these are areas, my friends, that affects everything. Even it affects our relationship, spiritual, amongst each other and God. Because when people are, whether it be sexual frustration or whatever it is, some people just can't come to church and worship God. They can't focus. They can't do anything. They can't go to work. They can't. And it's not only sex, it's everything else involved, really. Because we are human beings that God made, and God has placed these things in us. And if these things aren't addressed or spoken of or regulated or whatever it is, then it affects the entire person. And we need to address these things. We need to talk about these things. Don't talk to me about it now. All right? But you, where you are, in this country or in another country, another hemisphere, wherever, whatever it is, you need to be able to address individuals, address your family, address your children. Talk to those who work with you in the church, even amongst your leaders, because sometimes amongst the leadership, I've known pastors, I've known ministers, evangelists, deacons, bishops, you know them too, all over the world. You know the problems that ministers, male and female, men and women, you know the situations that you've heard or you've had to deal with. People, just do not adjust to themselves or with their partners. When I say partners, I'm talking husbands and wives now. Anything outside of the marriage relationship as God intended, I'm not talking about that. Yeah, I'm not addressing that at this time, because it's a marriage relationship we're talking about. Okay. All right. So considering only one's own desires and needs makes these adjustments impossible and leads to serious marital problems and often divorce. Attitudes other than selfishness are just as dangerous. Indifference, emotional withdrawal, lack of consideration, failure to communicate, bitterness, impatience, and so many more. These little foxes, and we did talk about these little foxes in chapter 2 and verse 15, can do great damage to marriages, and we see it. You know about it. You may be a counselor or a marriage counselor. You may be a minister, a pastor, a bishop, that you have to counsel people. And sometimes, if not most times, you have to counsel people. Even you yourself, even me, myself, we can't leave ourselves out. But we're not perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. And we've had to address certain things. So all of us are tainted with these things. But we need to address them. We need to talk about it. Not only tell them to go back and pray. Back in the day, I will always hear people, go and pray about it. Go and pray. Yeah, prayer helps. Prayer does help. It does help. And I do tell people to go and pray. But we need to sit down and talk. Anyway, at least out of 100%, we talk 50%, and you could take the next 50 as prayer. Again, it all depends on what the situation is. It all depends, again, what the person is, the character of the individual. So prayer may be more of a percent and the talk may be small. Or the talk may be a greater percentage and the prayer a small percentage. It all depends on the individuals. Every couple experiences problems in their marriage. Kings and queens, in fact, they experience their problems, and we hear about it, and we know about it. It's all over the news when things happen, and when things creep out, or you have a whistleblower in the palaces or wherever it is, wherever they may live. It comes out as very ugly, very distasteful. Anytime there is more than one person in a relationship, problems will arise. Some people even have trouble living with themselves. Never mind having somebody to live with them. They can't even live with themselves. They're fighting themselves. They hurt themselves. They can't cope all by themselves. It's quite funny, isn't it? It's like a madman walking down the street and he's there talking and fussing and fighting and may even be fighting himself. And it's very funny to see people fight themselves, isn't it? It's very funny to see a madman or a mad individual, a person with mental issues fighting themselves. They can't live with themselves. They hate themselves. And we have that kind of situation um, with people who can't deal with themselves. They get married, and then the marriage is just it's confusion, because not only does the counselor have to deal with the relationship itself between the individuals, but the counselor may even have to deal with the individual separately and apart, because that may be the issue. Not so much, to some extent, the greater issue of the marriage, but because they can't live with themselves, the marriage is thrown into all sorts of situations. The honeymoon is over when the problems start. And here in this scripture, we find here that Solomon and the Shulamite, in the post honeymoon of their marriage, adjustments are necessary within the marriage. Adjustments. And in this particular passage here, 1 to 4, we are seeing somehow a picture of indifference and withdrawal. It more or less shows a picture of the wife rejecting her husband. Now, you may not see it. I don't know what else you may see. I don't know I don't know what you may see. I don't know. But here, just in the first 4 verses, obviously, this chapter has it has 16 verses. Yeah, it has 16 verses, and we're going to be looking at each section. But in this section here, in this particular section, the wife has locked the bedroom door to keep her husband out. All right. Have you ever had to do that, or have you experienced that, where you may be the husband and your wife, and the very beginning, it could even be happening now. I don't know. I don't know, but have you not been able to approach her? The door may not have been locked. It may be open. But let's talk about, let's look at both sides now. The door, you may not be able to go into the door, or you may not be able to approach her full stop. At some point, she has withdrawn herself. Something has happened, and indifference has come in. Or are you the wife? Are you the woman who has just either physically locked the door and you won't allow your husband to come into the room, or you just lock the door and you won't allow your husband to approach you? Which one is it? Which one is it? And there is so much here that probably we could look at and touch on. And marriage really is a very complicated relationship, isn't it? It can be. And I'm sure there are many in ministry, or there are many as counselors. You had every relationship, every marriage is different. Every man, every woman is different. They carry their own baggages into the relationship. They bring their own mindsets and their way of life and their culture into the marriage. And one has to be able to give them. Both cannot be stubborn and saying they're not moving or they're not relenting. There needs to be some adjustment. Adjustments are necessary. Now, the scene of this particular passage, and I'm going to go very quickly here. I don't want to really, I don't want to bore you. And again, I'm not going to touch on every aspect. It's for you to go back and to read and to look at. And there are resources there. I'm not saying that resources will always give you an answer to what the scriptures are saying. But the only way we're going to really know what the scripture is saying is when we go back to God. We ask the Lord to help us to understand what he is saying. Remember, this is not just only between Solomon and the Shulamite, but this here, this account, these scriptures within the Song of Songs is also communicating to us about the relationship of God and his people, Christ and his church, Christ and the bride. We must understand that. Yes, we must. We, the bride, we as God's people, we are going into a completely different culture. Culture in the sense that God has opened himself to us, and we must be able, we cannot take our physical, fleshly way of life or our culture into the realms of glory. No, we can't be stubborn. We have to be flexible, and we have to submit ourselves to God. That's the only way it's going to work. In this case, we have to relinquish our hold on what we desire. And sometimes as men, in responding to our women and seeing how our women, our wives act, sometimes that in itself is difficult, isn't it? And women, you know how difficult it is again when for your husband to relent. But when he gives back, it's not that he's giving up so that your way is correct, or he is stepping back. He's allowing you because again he just wants peace. All right, you can take me upon that probably at some stage. I'm not a marriage counselor, but you understand. I'm hoping that you'll understand again what the scriptures are saying between Solomon and Shulamite, and what God is saying about his people and Christ and his bride. There is a far deeper message. There's a far deeper communique that is being transmitted to us, and we have to listen. Our ears really has to be tuned to the voice of God. The scene begins late at night when the wife is in bed. She said that she was sleeping, but her heart was awake. It is quite possible that Solomon's wife was describing a dream. Another possibility is that she was claiming to be half asleep. In other words, her body was asleep, but her mind and spirit were out. In her state of half sleep, she heard her husband knocking at the door, as it says in verse 2. He was calling to her to open the door. Keep in mind that most husbands and wives in the ancient Near East occupied separate bedrooms. It's not like us today. In the ancient Near East, husband and wives occupied separate bedrooms. In our day, in our culture, whether it be West Indian, English, American, whatever it is, we in the West, we see husbands and wives sharing the same bedroom. When we find out, if at all we find out that the husband has one room and the wife has one room, and they sleep in separate rooms, alarm bells automatically start ringing in our heads, because we think and we say something is wrong. It may not be, It may not be. It may just be that they're happy together. But for us, that's not the norm, is it? It's not my norm. And I don't think it's your norm. But once in the West, once you're married, you cohabit in the same room, same bedroom. Okay? He was calling to her to open the door. Keep in mind here about the Near East, way of how they're living. Wealthy couples had private suites. In any event, Solomon declared his intention by using 4 special names for his wife. 1 was the sister, 2, my love, 3, my dove, 4, my undefiled. Yes, my sister expressed their close bond. it is just an expression. It wasn't that it was his sister. It's just a close expression. My love or my darling was a favorite name for her. And we see that Solomon used that expression again, my love, my darling, a few times even before now. He's even used my dove, a name he previously, or well, a name he had not previously called, but one that emphasized her beauty and character. And the fourth one is my undefiled, my flawless one, means perfect and complete. Perfect and complete. What do you think comes to mind right there and then? When God presents his people, when the Messiah, when the King presents to himself a glorious church without spot, wrinkle, or any such blemish. So, he is the one that is getting us ready. There are things that we need to do, yes, but when we see the marriage ceremony, and even while Solomon in chapters, I think it was 3 and 4, when he took the Shulamite into Jerusalem, how he transported her in, what he gave to her pearls, the myrrh, the frankincense, all of the things that she didn't have, but the expensive ointments and perfume that she wore, he was the one that gave it to her. He was the one again that may even have clothed her with fine linen. Isn't that what God is going to do for his bride? Even as I have read some time ago in, I believe it's Revelation 19, he's going to give the bride fine linen, which represents the righteousness, his righteousness. So here, Solomon is expressing that his wife is undefiled. She is flawless. Solomon used the series of names because he knew she was, again, he's expressing and he's thinking that she's unhappy with him. He was trying to soften her anger and disposition towards him. He appealed to her sympathy by saying, my head is filled, soaked with the night dew. Instead of being stirred by Solomon's endearing terms, the Shulamite refused his advances. The coat or robe she wore was a long linen undergarment worn next to the skin. It was distinct from the night garment or lingerie, and from the general term used by describe clothing. Solomon tried to unlatch the door from the outside. Apparently, there was a hole in the door that provided access to the crossbar that secured it. Nothing indicates that Solomon was angrily trying to force his way into the room. Perhaps he was attempting to overcome his wife's excuses by letting himself in. That way she would not have to get dressed or get her feet dirty or get up to let him in. Why did the Shulamite reject her husband and refuse to meet his sexual needs? These are things that, this is a question I'm quite sure has arisen or arisen in your mind or in the mind of others. It is possible that the hour was late, she was tired, and not in the mood at all for lovemaking. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Husbands must realize that every refusal by their wives to have sex is not a rejection of them personally. Women who must cook, do laundry, tend to a house, care for children are usually exhausted by bedtime. And us men, we need to understand that. Sometimes big problems, quarrels, fights even, dissension, and eventually divorce comes about because some men do not understand or fails to understand their wives for whatever the reasons. need to communicate. That's one of the 5 things here that women like, isn't it? They like to talk. They like to talk. Now, it's not that men don't like to talk, but men don't talk as much as women. Now, that could be argumentative. It could really give a long spiel about um, or debate about whether men talk more than women or some men talk more than women. And yes, probably they do. Probably there are men who do talk far more than women. But the general consensus, I would think, and I would say, is that women love to have a good conversation. They love to talk about something. And there's some things that goes on in our minds as men that fascinates us, of what some women can really have a good conversation about. And we sometimes think, how can you talk about that? How can you talk for 15, 20, 30 minutes about a particular subject when for us that's not important, or it's not on the radar at all? But anyway, women love to talk. So here, and for us, Solomon probably just needed to understand what's going on with the Shulamite. Why has she rejected him? It is more likely in this case, however, that the wife, the Shulamite, was angry with her husband for some reason. Perhaps they had set an appointed time when Solomon would be home and they would spend the evening together. Sometimes that also is a problem in a marriage relationship. The husband goes off either at work or meeting friends or doing something or the other, and all his wife wants him to do is to be home, just to sit down and have a conversation, just to talk. And sometimes those conversations get quite heated, isn't it? Because as far as the husband is concerned, or the wife is concerned on some issues, they're right and they're wrong. And none of the 20. Sometimes does it not only end in arguments. Sometimes they have a good laugh. Sometimes, it's very amicable. But the underlying essence, though, is that she may have been expecting Solomon to be there, to talk, to spend some time, to be in her presence at least. But knowing Solomon, if he was king, he had things to do. He had matters of state to address. And every man had a matter of state to address, isn't it? Sometimes our wives just need to understand that, yes, we will take time. Yes, we have to be home. Yes, the children need to know that the dad is there and he loves them and such. But as far as the husband, the father is concerned, he needs to address a particular area. And there needs to be, on both sides, again, give and take. There needs to be some understanding between the two so as to make things work. So Solomon's wife refused to sleep with him because she was hurt, she was angry, and she was resentful that she was no longer his only queen, and that he had built up to that point, it would seem, a harem of over 100 women. All of these things could have come in. All of these things. I mean, can you, as a man, can you imagine marrying the woman that you have now, but then you bring over 100 other women into the relationship? How would your wife react? Now, I know back in those days, it was kind of, even though they didn't like it, I don't think it was something that they would be comfortable with, but the rejection wouldn't be probably as harsh as it would be today in the Western world I'm talking about. So the king now, Solomon, having over 100 women, obviously his wife is not going to be happy with it. She couldn't live with it. Probably she didn't realize what she was getting involved with, you know. And sometimes that happens, isn't it? Sometimes the secrets of the family, of the man in which she's marrying, or the secrets of the woman in which he is marrying, does not only comes to light when when the marriage ceremony is finished and the relationship begins to develop. Then the things that they never shared between each other begins to come to light. And there are some relationships, some marriages that are just really terrible. So terrible at times that if they can't work through it, if they can't adjust to it, that divorce then comes in, and a marriage is destroyed, family is destroyed, children are completely messed up, all because of the baggages that people have brought into the marriage, and they haven't really been willing to deal with it. I'm going to stop right here because it's a wide area. All of, can't solve marriage in an hour. Can't do that. Can't solve marriage even within 1 year or 10 years. But what it is, I believe that we need to do as husbands, starting with myself, and also with wives, when we go into a marriage relationship, and when we are counseling others going into a marriage relationship, they must go in with their eyes wide open. Not only that, but they must also go in willing that whatever it is that they find, that they can talk and adjust to the indifferences. So that may happen, that may come along, and even the time of withdrawal, at times, all of that will come in. But when you do that, you adjust to it, you deal with it, you talk about it, you share about these things, and you pray. God must be involved. He has to be. Because if God is not involved in some relationships, or in all relationships, especially those of us who say that we are children of God, my friends, we need to be living examples to this world. We need to be, because if we're not living examples, then who is the world, the inhabitants of this world, going to go to? How are they going to know how to live if we're not doing it ourselves? So may God bless you. We will pray in another area of this particular chapter, if at all. But we will pray anyway. We won't complete this chapter or move on to the next chapter without praying. So may God bless you. Have a great day. Enjoy yourself. And again, continue to read God's word.